The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. Good night, and good luck.
Good night and good luck. That was CBS News legend Edward R. Murrow signing off from an episode of See It Now during the McCarthy era. The scene is depicted in George Clooney's new Broadway play. It's called Good Night and Good Luck. The Broadway show comes 2 decades after he directed, co-wrote, and starred as a news producer, Fred Friendly, in the movie of the same name. This time, however, George Clooney is taking on the role of Edward R. Murrow. The play depicts the conflict between the journalist and Senator Joseph McCarthy that played out on CBS back in 1954. So in our road to the Tonys, George Clooney dropped by our studio last week. We were glad to see him, to talk with us about his Broadway debut. This is our conversation. Hey, George Clooney.
Hello, Gayle. How are you?
I'm
What
good.
have you been doing? You haven't been updated?
No, I haven't been doing much, but let's talk about you.
Okay.
Because I was there opening night.
Yeah.
The minute you stood before the microphone, the place just erupted and exploded because everybody was so glad to see you. I want to know what that was like for you opening night, making your Broadway debut, what that felt like. Were you nervous in that moment? You had been practicing and rehearsing, so I know you know the material. Mm-hmm. But on the opening night, what was that like for you, you veteran and 2-time sexy man in the universe?
That's right. Well, not with this hair. That's over.
We'll talk about that later.
Oh, my God.
What was that like?
It's nerve-wracking, as you could imagine. It's been 40 years since I've done a play.
Yeah.
So I've spoken a lot in front of big crowds, and so that's okay. I was pretty prepared for that. But, you know, there is a huge responsibility with these words because they're Edward R. Murrow's words. There's a lot of people in that audience who know those speeches by heart.
And there's some people that don't know anything about those
It's
speeches.
true.
Yeah.
But it's good to have both. But I feel a sort of an enormous responsibility to the people who originally said these words to make sure that I do it well. And so, yeah, it's nerve-wracking.
But this is the thing. I remember I watched the movie when it first came out 20 years ago. You co-wrote it, directed it. Were you always thinking 2025? Because it's eerie how much it seems to parallel with so many things that are happening today.
Well, I think, unfortunately, Gayle, I think that it's always going to parallel whatever's happening today. I think that this would have, if we did it with Jefferson and Adams, I think it would have still held true because it's about speaking truth to power. And it's important to remember that we reserve the power of the press because it has to be the check and balance against corruption, against government incursion. It has to be. And so when we were planning to do it, it was almost 2 years ago now. There was no election yet. That we didn't know what it was going to be. We just thought it's always an important time to talk about holding people's feet to the fire about telling the truth.
And I think in this particular play, Edward R. Murrow seemed to be making a point that no matter what, the facts always matter, and you must tell the truth.
I think that's
regardless of the cost, George, regardless of the cost.
It has to be regardless of the cost. Edward R. Murrow lost his job from this. All those guys in that room lost their show for this, their program for this. Look, it is really about who we are as Americans. Right? It is about us at our best and our bravest, quite honestly. And to take on a demagogue like McCarthy was. McCarthy was just making up things, holding up signs. It would take a blank piece of paper and say, I have a list of names, and hold it up. But the reality was most people weren't prosecuted for that. They used intimidation and fear of losing your job, of losing your place in society. They used that to get people to censor themselves, which is a familiar sounding.
Yeah, I want to say there's a spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen the play, but it ends with a montage from the beginning of broadcast TV to current day. What was your intention there? What do you want the audience to get out of that montage?
It's a little bit like that frog in the water when you turn up the heat and it doesn't really realize it's being boiled. We start off with, watching ourselves go through the history of television. And the interesting moments, the John Kennedy's salute and and Martin Luther King and man landing on the moon and goofy things, Lucille Ball, and the things that are cute and funny.
Yes.
And then there's a turn, and the turn sort of turns on Jerry Springer of all people, which is that now people are laughing at being cruel. It is the point to make fun of people and laugh at them. And that became the sort of mantra that we see permeate our television and our lives now. And I feel that that's probably what I see happening in government a lot, which is, I think the point is to be cruel.
In a recent 60 Minutes profile, could we run the soundbite where George was talking about the importance of journalism?
When the other three estates fail, when the judiciary and the executive and the legislative branches fail us, the fourth estate has to succeed. Has to succeed.
Has to succeed.
Yeah.
You know, after this interview, just so you know, President Trump called you a second-rate movie star.
That's true.
And a failed we were just saying that about you the other day, George.
Yeah, that's okay.
And a failed political pundit. You know, we're saying it in jest, but what was your reaction?
I don't care. I mean, I've known Donald Trump for a long time. You know, my job is not to please, you know, the President of the United States. My job is to try to tell the truth when I can and when I have the opportunity. And look, I'm well aware of the idea that that people will not like that. There will be people that criticize that, and there's certainly people. You know, Elon Musk is, you know, weighed in every once in a while. That's their right to do it, and it's my right to say the other side.
I have to take a moment looking at you with the dark hair.
I know it's not good.
I didn't say it wasn't good.
Oh, it's not good.
But it's jarring to me. I wonder what it's like for you when you get up in the morning and you look. By now, I'm sure you're used to it. But
I'm not used to it. You never get used to it.
You don't?
Listen, I started getting gray.
It throws me a little bit.
25.
Yeah.
So I've been gray most of my life. So it's not my favorite look. And my wife,
yes,
she doesn't. She thinks it's funny.
Does she? What do your children say?
Well, they laugh at it because honestly, nothing makes you look older than being 63 and dyeing your hair.
And I am curious about your wife and the twins. Everybody good? Are they in New York with you while you're doing the play?
They were here. They've got a school that they like and are having fun at. You know, Amal and I are having a really great time in life.
And, tell me about that. Yeah.
Our kids are 7. They're about to be 8.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty great age.
Yeah.
And they're really curious and funny, and every parent thinks their kids are great, and our kids are funny and make us laugh. And Amal and I, you know, I remember we were here with you once before, and remember we said we'd never had an argument. We still haven't.
You still haven't?
No, we're trying to find something to fight about.
Yeah, but
we're I think because I started so late with Amal.
I remember when you said you never get married, you'd never have kids.
Yes.
Now you're married and you have 2
See what
children.
happened?
Yeah.
Look what happened to me.
Yeah.
And we have such a, I feel so extraordinarily lucky to have met this incredible woman. And I feel as if I hit the jackpot. And there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think I'm the luckiest man in the world.
Oh.
So it's great.
What a great feeling. Good Night and Good Luck is on Broadway now at the Winter Garden Theater. Run, Don't Walk. It's very good. Tony nominees come out May 1st, and the 78th Annual Tony Awards will air Sunday, June 8th, right here on CBS, and stream on Paramount+. Something tells me we're going to hear George's name called that morning of the nominations. But it's interesting, you know, with his children, I don't know about your kids, but Mike grew up in a news household because his dad was a newsman too. So he always watched the news growing up. Do your kids watch the news?
They watch the news. They think I do a chat. They say, you chat on TV. You're going to go chat tomorrow? That's all. I don't think they have a sense of the grandeur. You know, we do a lot of different things on this show. But what about your kids? Do they have any sense of it?
Social media is where they find their news.
Yeah, that's where they get everything.
He said he hasn't really introduced his kids to the news yet because they're a little too young, and 7, I think, is probably right. But the thing that really bugs him about the show is the smoking. There's a lot of smoking back in the day. Even though it's herbal cigarettes, he says that was hard for him.
I just want to underscore, I've also seen it. It's a fantastic play.
So
it's
good,
way more
Tony.
complex than you could ever expect.
Yes.
It's really good. You should check it out.
The type of piece that George Clooney is lost in is the type of piece we all should seek for.
Yeah.